Pseches Bava Kamma Daf Nun. We begin with the Mishnah at the bottom of Daf Mem Tes. The Mishnah introduces the machlokes as to what is a bar exactly. Is a bar something which belongs to you? You own the bar, or is it just a dangerous situation that you created, even if you don't own it? So the Mishnah discusses three cases as to where the bar is in whose rishus. It talks about where you opened the bar and where you dug the bar. That's where you started to dig it, and then where you made the opening, which could have been a different rishus. So it talks about if you started to dig the bar in rishus hayachid and you opened it in rishus harabim. That's pretty much the same as having a hole now in rishus harabim. Or if you started in rishus harabim and then you opened it into rishus hayachid, so that's the same as having a bar in rishus hayachid. Or you started in one rishus hayachid and ended in a different rishus hayachid. Now Rashi says, in one case we left out is from rishus harabim to rishus harabim. Rashi says that's pashit, that will be included. All four of these cases you're chayiv, and that's because the Tana of this Mishnah does not differentiate between whether you made the bar in Rishus Yachid or Rishus Harabim. And that is exactly the topic that the Gemara launches into. The Gemara quotes a brisa discussing where is the chiyuv of the bar. When the Torah said you need to pay for the damages caused by the bar, what is that referring to? So the brisa quotes a machlokes between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Shmuel says we're talking about a bar that was opened into Rishus Harabim. It's in Rishus Harabim. It's not in your place. You're responsible for the dangerous situation that you caused. You don't own it. It's not something that you own necessarily. That is the bar that the Torah was referring to. Rabbi Akiva says no. It's talking about where you made it in your own property. You are mafkir everything around it so that people can accidentally walk into it, but you still own the land that the bar is on. You have to own it. The only way you're chayav for a bar is if you own it. And Rabbi Kiva says, Zehu, this is the bar that the Torah was referring to. So you have a machlokes Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Kiva, which apparently means that each of them holds that the others is not a bar. This is not what the Torah was referring to, and you're not chayav for it. Now, the Gemara is going to get into a machlokes Rabbah and Rabbi Yosef as to whether they actually argue on both cases or they only argue in one case. But before that, let's just learn what the psukim that we will bring are. So Rabbi Shmuel brings the pasuk of ki yiftach ishbar and ki yichra ishbar, and he says, why do you have to mention both of them? If you're chayiv for opening a bar that somebody else dug, that's ki yiftach, that you just take off the cover. So you're certainly chayiv if you dug the bar yourself. So why are you mentioning that? So the answer is there's the extra phrases to teach me that the chiyuv you have is for the iskei kriya and psicha, is for creating the dangerous scenario. It's not necessarily because it's something that you own. Now, that's ki yiftach and ki yichra. Now, Rabbi Akiva would disagree with that, and he says, no. The reason that it says that is because you have a chiddush in each of them. If it would have only say ki yiftach, that you open the bar, I would think that's the only case where it's enough to cover it. But if you actually dug the bar, covering it is not enough, because it says v'lo yichasenu is the next phrase, meaning if you covered, you're okay. I would think that that's only, if it would only say that by when you open the bar that someone else dug, I would think that only if you opened it, is it enough to close it? But if you dug it, you would have to fill it. That's what it has to say. Ki yichra, that if you dig the bar and you didn't cover it, it will be enough if you covered it. Now, if it only mentioned where you dug the bar, so then I would think only if you dug the bar, that's where you're chayiv to cover it. And otherwise, you're chayiv for the hezek that it causes. If you just open the bar, it's not your bar. Why should you have to worry about it? And therefore, you need both of these. So he doesn't agree with Rabbi Shmuel's limud from the pasuk. Now, what's Rabbi Akiva's pasuk? So he says the Torah calls the person who owns the bar. He says it refers to him as the Bal Habar. It says Bal Habar Yushalim. You see that there's an owner of the bar. That means it has to be talking about your Rishus Yachid, where you own it. You mafka everything around it. Otherwise, you could say, what's this guy walking here that he fell in? Fine. So you mafka everything around it, but it has to belong to you. And now on that, Rabbi Shmuel answers, he says, no, Baal HaBar doesn't mean the owner of the ground in which the bar exists. Baal HaBar means the owner of the dangerous situation, the one who created the danger. He's called Baal HaBar. Okay, so this is the machlokes. Now the question is, do they really agree? Do they really argue on both cases? Rabbi Shmuel says only Rishus Harabim, and Rabbi Kiva says only Rishus Yachid, and not the other cases. So Rabbah and Rabbi Yosef both say that no, they only argue over one case, and in one case they agree. But Rabbah and Rabbi Yosef argue which is the case in which they argue. So Rabbah says they both agree in Rabbi Shmuel's case. Rabbi Kiva agrees in Rabbi Shmuel's case, where it's in Rishus Harabim. You created just at the Kala. Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Kiva both agree that you chayav for that because of the drasha of ki yiftach ki yichra, you're chayav for the iskei bar. Rabbi Akiva agrees to that drasha. The only difference is the machlekes is in the case of Rabbi Akiva, that's where you were mafgrid and you still own it. Do you learn the drasha of Baal Habar, meaning you own the land, or do you say like Rabbi Shmuel that Baal Habar just means Baal Takola? Now the Gemara says, according to this, why does Rabbi Akiva say Zehu? This is the bar that the Torah referred to. It's not true. He agrees to the other one. He agrees to the case of Rosh Hashanah also. So the Gemara answers, when the Torah talks about the two psukim, one is written when it talks about the tashlumin of the bar, one is written when it talks about the nezikin of the bar. All he meant to say was, in the case when the Torah is talking about tashlumin, this is the bar that it talks about there. And he's responding to Rabbi Shmuel and saying, no, the Torah talks about this bar by tashlumin. This is the bar that the Torah is talking about by tashlumin, by the case of where you own it. Okay, now, Rabbi Yosef says the opposite. Rabbi Yosef says Rabbi Yishmael agrees to Rabbi Akiva's case. So in Rabbi Akiva's case, where you own the bar, everybody agrees. We have a drasha balabar that you chayav for that. And balabar yishalim, you definitely chayav for that. Machlekes is in Rabbi Shmuel's case. Rabbi Akiva doesn't agree to Rabbi Shmuel, and that's if you were made it in Rosh Hashanah, and you only made the takal, but you don't own anything there. Rabbi Shmuel says this is still a bar, and Rabbi Akiva says that's not a bar, and because again he doesn't hold of the drasha of ki yiftach ki yicher, meaning al iskei kriya, he learns that it's for a chiddush you need for each of them. And again, then when I ask the same thing, why does he say zehu? Why does Rabbi Shmuel say the zehu, the bar that was speaking about avails of both? The Gemara says he's pointing out that when we talked about Nezikin, this is the one we're talking about over there. So you see the Torah is talking about this bar. The Gemara now asks a kasha on Rav Yosef from a Raisa, which seems to say that there is a machlekes in the case of Rishus Hayachid that belongs to him, where Rav Yosef said there's no machlekes. So the Brisa says as follows: it has what appears to be three cases and a diak in one of the cases, which gives us a fourth case. So the first case is somebody makes a pit, a bar in Rosh Hashanah, and the opening is in Rosh Hashanah. So he's potter for that, even though he's not allowed to do that because he made a tunnel under Rosh Hashanah. You're not allowed to make a tunnel under Rosh Hashanah, but he's potter for it because the opening is in Rosh Hashanah. That's a key case here. It shows that you're potter for Rosh Hashanah. Now, next case is where you started in Rosh Hashanah and you opened it in Rosh Hashanah. So the opening is in Rosh Hashanah. Here you chayev. Third case is where you made it in Rosh Hashanah, but it's next to Rosh Hashanah. So if you made it as a foundation for your wall, which you're allowed to do, your putter, and on that Rabbi Yehuda holds you chayiv. You have to make a fence around the hole to keep people from falling in. Now, however, in the opinion of the Bava Kamma, if it's Rosh Hashanah close to Rosh Hashanah, if it's for Leushin, if it's for a foundation, which is a normal permitted use, you putter. Implication being, if it's just a random hole, you chayiv. So here you see that a hole in Rosh Hashanah you are chayiv for. When we started off, our first case was a hole which is in Rosh Hashanah you're potter for. Machlekes between two cases here, are you potter or chayiv for a hole in Rosh Hashanah? Now, Rabbah said there's a machlekes in Rosh Hashanah, so he could say that one of these is Rabbi Shmuel and one of these is Rabbi Akiva. According to Rabbi Yosef, though, there is no machlekes in the case of Rosh Hashanah, and machlekes is only in the case of Rosh Hashanah. How would he explain the contradiction in the first case and the last case of this brisa? Answers the Gemara, it's not a problem. Rabbi Yosef will tell you a different shot in the steer between the Reish and the Seifa. I'll say this is in all opinions, Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva, who all agree that in the case of Rosh Hashanah, you're chayiv. So the Seifa, which said you're chayiv for the case of Rosh Hashanah, is referring to all opinions. The Reish that your potter is talking about where you weren't mafkir the Rishus. You own the Rishus all around it, and therefore you could say to anybody who walks in there, you have no business being in my Rishus. I'm potter for any hezek that happens to you. Says the Gemara, once Rav Yosef answered it this way, to make that the brisa is all one shita, so let's do that for Rabbah also, because the way we said, according to Rabbah, that the Reisha is one opinion, the Seif is a different opinion, is not so glad. Now we could fit it in with everybody, and we could say that really we're referring to Rabbi Yishmael. This is all Rabbi Yishmael holds your potter for Rosh Hashanah. The reason in the last case we can make a diak that you'd be chayiv is because we're talking about where you widened your Rosh and you were actually mafgard all to Rosh Hashanah, therefore your whole ends up being in Rosh Hashanah. If you mafgard Rosh Hashanah, it's in Rosh Hashanah, there Rabbi Shmuel holds your chayiv for Rosh Hashanah whole. Gemara asks another kasha from a brisa, similar brisa. This brisa has two cases only. It says, first of all, somebody digs a bar in Rosh Hashanah and opens it in Rosh Hashanah, so the opening is in Rosh Hashanah, you chayiv for that. If it's Rosh Hashanah close to Rosh Hashanah, so that you own it, it's not Rosh Hashanah, but it's on the edge, so people could fall in, you're potter for that. So, says the Gemara, according to Rabbah, this makes a lot of sense. It's Rabbi Shmuel, and therefore, for the case of the opening being in Rishus Harabim, it's Hefker, so you're chayav for that like Rabbi Shmuel holds. In the case where it's in Rishus Yachid, you're potter for that like Rabbi Shmuel holds. According to Rabbi Yosef, so the Reisha could be Rabbi Shmuel because there's a machlekes about that, and he'll say that this is Rabbi Shmuel holds in Rishus Harabim, you are chayav. But the Seifa that says that you are potter for Rishus Hayachid, that doesn't make sense according to Rabbi Yosef, because according to Rabbi Yosef, everyone agrees you're chayav for Rishus Hayachid. So who's that going to be? So the Gemara answers, it's talking about chayfer leushin, where you dug something that you're allowed to dig, and therefore everyone agrees that you're potter for that. The Gemara now changes the topics slightly and talks about someone who makes a well in Rishus Rabbim, and then he gives it over to the benefit of the public. And this will bring us into the Agadata about the famous Nechunya Chayfer HaBayres. So the Brisa says if somebody digs a well, opens it, and leaves it open, and he gives it over to the rabbin to take care of, he made a well for people to drink, so he's potter for that, because he did something to benefit the tzibur. If he, however, opened it, he dug it, and he opened it, and he did not give it to the tzibur, then he's chayav for it. Says the Brisa, this was the custom of Nechunya Chayfer HaBayros, Sichen U'Aros, that he was the Nechunya who would dig wells and springs. When he dug a well, he opened it and he gave it to Rishus Harabim. And the Gemara doesn't say, but it's because the people who are oile regal should have what to drink on their way up. So when the Chachamim heard, they said that this one was Mekayim, this halacha. So Gemara says this halacha and not any other halacha. Gemara says no, even this halacha. Now the Gemara quotes another brisa that says a story that happened with the daughter of Nechunya Chayfer Sichen, that she fell into a big well. And they came, and they couldn't fish her out, so they came and they said to Reb Chanina ben Daisa, what are we going to do? So the first time they came, he said, it's okay. Shalom, he said. The second time, he said, Shalom Mochel. The third time, he said, she's already out. So they went and they checked, and she was taka out. So they said to her, how did you get out? So he said, I saw a male ram, and an old man was leading it. The implication that this was Avram Avinu and Eloi Shel Yitzchak, the ram of Yitzchak's Akedah. Now, the Gemara says they went back to Nechunya, to Rabbi Chanina ben Daisa. They said, are you a Navi that you knew that? He said, I'm not a Navi, not the son of a Navi. I just knew that it's impossible that something that this tzaddik excelled in, which is the creation of wells, that would cause his own children to suffer. And therefore, she must have been out. She must have been safe because she couldn't stay there any longer and still be healthy. Says Rav Acha, even though that's true, still the son of Nechunya died from thirst. Even though he himself excelled in slaking people's thirst, he died from thirst. And the reason is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu judges tzaddikim to very exact judgment. Like it says, Sviva of Nisara Ma'oid, those who are around him are Nisara, from the word stormy, or from the word Sarah, from the word hair. Teaches that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is specific, is exacting with those who are close to him, even like the thickness of a hair. Nechunya said a different source of that. It says El Naratz beside Gadesh Rabba, a Nara called Sviva. He's Nara called Sviva, but he's especially awesome to those who are near him and surround him. So Nechunya, anyone who says the HaKadosh Baruch Hu kind of waves thing, he just gives up on things, he's a vatron, he foregoes things, he himself will have his life foregone upon. Because it says, Hatzortem and Palek, Cholderch Mishpat, everything Hashem does is justice, there is no just waving things out of the blue. Said Rav Chana, some say it was Shmuel Bar Nachmani, it was Pshat in the Pasuk, that says, Hashem is Erech Apayim, long in the tempers. Why plural? That implies long in the good and the bad. He leaves the good and the bad. What does that mean? So the Gemara means for tzaddikim and for Shem. For tzaddikim, he refrains from repaying them right away so they could get greater schar in the long term. For Risham, he refrains from punishing them right away, giving them a chance to do tshuva. Gemara brings another brisa that says a person who's clearing stones out of his field should never throw them into the public domain for no other reason than at least because he himself needs to use the public domain. Brisa quotes an incident that happened with a person who was clearing stones from his property to the Rishus Harabim. Chassid found him and said, "Fool, why are you throwing things from property which is not yours to property which is yours?" Meaning you may own this now, but you may end up selling it, but Rishus Harabim is always going to be yours. So that guy laughed at him and he said, But a few days later, or after a while later, it actually happened that he was forced to sell the field, and he was walking in that Rosh Hashanah, and he tripped on the rocks that he himself had thrown there when he owned the field, and he said, "How good is it that Chassid said to me, why are you throwing things from your own field, from a field which is not yours, to a property which is yours?" We'll now begin the next Mishnah, which discusses how the shape of the bar, the hole you're making in Rosh Hashanah, how does that change the halacha? Two aspects to this is how deep is it, and the second aspect is what is the shape. So first of all, about the shape, the Mishnah says there are 5 different types of holes. Each one has a name, and it's because of a different shape, and therefore it has a different function, but it makes no difference whichever one it is. The 5 are bar, siach, ma'ara, charitz, or ne'itz. So a bar is a round hole, Rashi says. A ma'ara is like a cave, it has a roof, it's square and has a roof over it. Siach is a trench, long and narrow. Charitz is square like a cave but without a roof. And ni'itzin are wider on the top and narrower on the bottom. So those are the 5 different shapes, and again, it makes no chilek. So the Mishnah says that why then does the Torah use the word bar rather than any other one? And that's to teach me that just like a bar can only kill someone or some animal falling into it if it's at least 10 tvachim deep, all of these also only chai for misa if they're 10 tvachim deep. If it's less than 10 tvachim deep and something falls in and it dies, a shor or a chamor, you're putter for it. However, if it just gets injured, that you're chai for because it is deep enough to injure. And the Mishnah says that someone makes a hole in Rosh Hashanah and a shor or a chamor falls in, then of course you're chayiv for that. We now begin the Gemara, which introduces the Machlekes Rav and Shmuel, which we've seen quoted already many times in the Masechta. What aspect of the bar is it that the Torah is Mechayev for? So Rav and Shmuel both agree that there is hevel in the bar, that is, there's bad air, there's poisonous air in a hole in the ground, and that can cause the animal to become sick or weak and kill him or injure him, and you're chayev if that happens and for that. Now, according to Shmuel, it could also be chayev for him hitting himself, for him falling and striking himself on the floor or beyond the bar. If he's hitting himself, the impact can be a damage for which one is chayav for bar as well. According to Rav, that can't be. You're not chayav for that because that is just the ground that did it, not the bar. It's karka olam. It's the ground that caused it. It would be at worst a grama, and you cannot hold the owner of the bar or the digger of the bar responsible for that. Now, says the Gemara, according to Shmuel, who holds that there is a responsibility for that, how does he know that there is hevel at all? So Gemara says there has to be because the Torah is mechayev a person for a bar that he digs. It does not quantify or qualify what is in the bar. If the bar is filled with soft cotton, so that anything which falls in there can't injure himself, you still chayev for anything that happens in there. So you see that the air alone could be what causes the issue. Now, it says the Gemara was not a between the two because you'll never know which it is that killed him or that injured him. It could always be the air. Could have weakened him, could have killed him, even if you see an injury, it could be something else as well. So the Gemara answers the difference would be if you had a hilltop. And if instead of making a hole in the ground, the person made something that you can trip over, made a little hillock, and the animal climbed up and fell off that, would you be chayav for that? According to Rav, you can't because there's no hevel there. It's not a hole in the ground. According to Shmuel, you could because there is hevel. Now, what's this machlekes based on? So Gemara says machlekes is based on how you read the pasuk where it says v'nafal sham shar chamar. V'nafal means it should fall into something. It should fall down into a hole, and therefore a bar is only a hole. That's what Rav holds. Or it could just mean falling, even falling off something, and it could even be a height. You should be chayav for that. That's what Shmuel holds. Okay, now the Gemara says, let's look at our Mishnah. We seem to have arrived from there. The Mishnah says, discussing why does the Torah mention the bar if it includes all 5 types of things. Someone says because just like a bar has to be 10 tvachim in order to kill, all these other things have to be 10 tvachim in order to kill as well. And it says afkol, including anything that has to be 10, that is 10 tvachim, can kill and can be chayav for that. So what does he mean afkol? What else are you including besides the 5 things that are listed here? Because according to Shmuel, it's good. It's including a hill. These 5 things, a hill is not mentioned among them. However, according to Rav, that hill is not included, so what's these 5 things? So the Gemara says to include charitz and itzin. Charitz and itzin are specifically mentioned as one of the 5 things the Gemara says. The Gemara says, yeah, we're just explaining. We mentioned them, and now we're explaining exactly who and what they are. The Gemara asks, what's Takab Shana in the Mishnah? Why do we list off all these 5 things separately? Why is each one a chiddush? So the Gemara explains why if I would have said each one, I wouldn't know the other ones. And the chiddush is that there is hevel in them. I mean, I've not known that there's bad air in them. So if I would have only said the bar would understand that it's hevel because it's deep and it's narrow. But a siach, which is a ditch, how would I know that there's hevel there? It is much more it's long, so it's much more open. If I know that there's hevel there, in those two, I wouldn't know about a ma'ara, because a ma'ara is square. That's not narrow. The ditch is narrow. If I would have only had those three, the bar, the siach, and the ma'ara, wouldn't know anything else, because those three are deep, narrow, and have a roof. The ma'ara has a roof. But how would I know a situation where there's no roof? So therefore I need to mention charitzin. And if I would only say that, I wouldn't know a situation where it's wider at the top and the hevel is more likely to be pushed out. I would know the case where it is wider at the top. And therefore I have to mention ni'itzin as well. Now, the Gemara tries to memorize this question from our Mishnah. The Mishnah said that if you had the bar which was less than 10 tefachim deep, and a shar or a chamar fell in there, and he died, since it was less than 10 tefachim deep, you're pater on the misa. However, if he was injured, you are chayiv for that. Now, the Gemara says, what would be the reason that you would be pater on the misa? Obviously, the reason is because if it doesn't fall from such a high height, it's less than 10 tefachim, it can't be struck with such force. So you see, it's the blow that hurts it, that kills it, not the hevel. Otherwise, it should make a difference. Someone says, no, if it's a less deep bar, it also has less hevel, and therefore the hevel is not enough to kill it. Versus if that's true, then it shouldn't be chayav for the hezek either, because there's no hevel in there. If you say that a bar that's not as deep doesn't have hevel, so it shouldn't be chayav even for hezek. Versus no, it has some hevel, it has enough hevel to cause an injury, but not enough hevel to cause a death. The Gemara quotes an incident in which the same kashas and the same discussion and back and forth happened. The incident was where there was an ox that fell into a stream, a man-made stream of water, which is an amma deep and an amma wide. That's why it's called amma samayim. It fell in there, and the owner came in and shechted it. So Rav Tarfon Paskin, it's treif. It's treif midin nefula. Nefula is a halacha that if an animal falls from a certain height, it's considered to be a treif unless it proves its health either by surviving 24 hours or by walking. This animal did neither of those, and therefore even though there's no visible injuries, it's assumed to be treif. Said Rav Nachman, had the owner of this ox had taken a little bit of flour, a kav of flour with him, and went to the Beis Medrash, taking the flour in order to survive off. While he goes to the Beis Medrash to ask the question, they would have told him, wait 24 hours. And then you could save your ox, and you could prove that he's not a treif, he's not on a fula. But because he didn't bother to do that, he lost the entire value of the ox, which is worth many, many kavana of flour. So could have saved it, but instead he lost it. So says the Gemara, you see from here that Rav Nachman holds that it's the blow that does it, and that the blow does exist when there's less than 10 tvachim, because he treifed this up because of 10 tvachim, because of the less than 10 tvachim, because of the fall. So it says Rava asked for Nachman from our Mishnah, same kash, it says there that if it falls in with less than 10 tvachim, it can't kill it, and it's pater for that. Now the reason must be because it's hitting it, because of the blow. And you see that because he holds that there is a blow there. So the Gemara says, no, it's not because of the blow, it's because of the hevel. And there's less hevel there. So again, the Gemara asks, but if there's hevel, then it should be pater from Nizikin also. So the Gemara says, no, there's hevel for Nizikin, but there's not enough hevel to cause Misa.